good evening, and good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to session 8. I would just like to inform you that in this session, we have both French and English interpretation available. If you would like to listen to the session in French or in English, please click the interpretation button on the bottom of your screen. It looks like a small globe, and pick the appropriate channel, either French or English for this session. So with that announcement, I'm now delighted to turn over to the moderator. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you, Georgina. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone who has joined us. You're all most welcome to the 24-hour celebration of the Environmental Rule of Law Global Symposium to mark the 40th anniversary of the Montevideo Programme and 50 years of international environmental law. My name is Sarah Naigaga. I work with the National Environment Management Authority in Uganda as a senior legal officer. I am happy to be moderating the symposium this afternoon. It is indeed a great tribute to those that started or conceived the idea of putting in place instruments that should guide us, the users of the environment, and establish principles that we have followed for 50 years now. It is a commendable cause and initiative. And being present to move it forward is also another attribute that we should be able to contribute to. My role as moderator is basically to see that we follow the program and we have fruitful deliberations. So as you may have looked at the program, this segment will be looking at partnerships to advance environmental law. And it has been generously organized by four institutions: the Association of Environmental Law Lecturers in African Universities, ASELAU, and we have Professor Collins Odot to give remarks later. Then the African Judicial Training Network on Environmental Law, ARIEL. We have the Network of Environmental Programme, National Focal Points, which is continuing what we are celebrating today, 50 years. Then we have the Hassan II International Center for Environmental Training. These have generously contributed and convened us to discuss this. So we will have welcome remarks from Mr. Robert Wapnoha from UNEP, and also central to coordinating the Montevideo program for us. And Professor Collins Odot, I've already mentioned, and Mr. Ayman Shekawi. Apologies if I pronounce the names not so well. And after that, we will then have perspectives on Montevideo Environmental Law Program by Dr. Paul Chihuelo. And after that, we will have a panel of speakers to discuss how we could build partnerships to advance environmental law in Africa. And we have 4 speakers that have been mobilized to speak to us, and these are seasoned and experienced speakers across the region. We have Dr. Jacob Salvador from Burkina Faso, his advisor to the ministry. Professor Emanuel Kasimbasi, a senior seasoned professor in environmental law. And Dr. Gabriela Kamara, as well as Ms. Zainabu Rashid. These will be speaking to us on how to advance partnerships for environmental law in Africa. And after that, we may have a session for question and answers. And I believe that we will keep and manage time very well so that there is that session to interact from the audience. Towards the end, we will have the president of the Youth Task Force for Climate in Africa, Mr. Kokwagan Mosiga, closing the symposium. So welcome once again to this segment or session to celebrate the environmental rule of law and mark 50 years of international environmental law. And without further ado, I now would like to invite Mr. Robert Wagnoha to give us welcome remarks. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the introduction. Welcome all the participants. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name, as has been announced, I'm Robert Wagnoha. I work for the UNEP Africa Office on Environment Governance. As we mark today, the 31st of May, 2012, the 40th anniversary of Montevideo Programme, we are also reminded that we are also marking the 50th anniversary of the Stockholm Declaration, the 50th anniversary of UNEP, the 30th anniversary of the Rio Summit, and also the 30th anniversary of the Johannesburg Plan of Action, in which, for the first time, the world Chief Justices met to work to deal with environmental law. It is an ideal occasion to celebrate the progress made in the development of environmental law, the achievements of member states and the global community in addressing the environmental issues and challenges which are facing the world. UNEP has been working on the subject of environmental law since the creation in 1972, and therefore the Montevideo Programme being celebrated today is standing out as the key issue, as the key subject matter for our meeting today. Here in Africa, in the 1990s, we saw most of the African countries develop the National Environment Action Plans, which are otherwise known as the NEPs, which saw the preparation of institutional, legal, and policy frameworks, which reshaped the whole of Africa. And those NEPs, being the foundation for the framework laws, transformed the continent's environmental law into a modern, consolidated environmental law as a subject matter. Here also in Africa, we saw the development of we have seen that the development of environmental law has gone in tandem with the rest of the world. Though we all know that African states, in whichever form, have in one form or another, have had environmental laws since time immemorial. However, as I've said, the modern environmental law, as we know them today, is a product of the 40 years we are celebrating. We African countries have enacted many constitutions, frameworks, and sector laws on environment. The African continent was also the first to hold a judges training program on environmental law in Mombasa, Kenya in 1996. And since then, we are seeing African jurisprudence growing from leaps and bounds. Over the 40 years also, we have seen many transboundary agreements in Africa being adopted over the last 40 years. Africa as we see today, is now witnessing the first, second, and third generation of environmental lawyers. That's why you hear about those networks, which will be talked about during the course of this session. And on that note, I'm happy to be among those lawyers who over the decades have been shaping environmental law in Africa. I'm happy to be alive to celebrate today. I'd like to invite you to join in this celebration and this discussion which we are having today. Thank you very much for listening to me. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Robert. Indeed, it is gratifying to be alive to see this. I now would like to invite the next speaker, Professor Collins Odot. You have also made milestones and contributions to this process. Professor.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you, Robert. I think I first met Sarah around over 20 years ago, somewhere in the Nile in Uganda, having conversations as younger people on public interest environmental law. So to hear us celebrating 40 years of Montevideo, and to see that we have participated in that process for maybe half of that period, I think it's a very monumental conversation. Just 3 months ago, we're also celebrating 50 years of UNEP. And I think today and tomorrow, there's also conversations taking place in Stockholm, celebrating what I think is the most monumental declaration, the Stockholm Declaration on Environmental Law. And I think since the Stockholm Declaration in 1972, law has continued to play a very catalytic role in addressing global environmental challenges. However, despite that, there still continues to be grave challenges that the globe faces, and the COVID-19 pandemic and its environmental linkages has demonstrated to us the challenges that continue to face us. For those of us who read a lot of the publications that are produced by UNEP, I would urge us all to read UNEP's Making Peace with Nature. And that report underscores the triple planetary crisis that we will have to grapple with as we move on to the next decade and decades. The challenges of pollution, the challenges of biodiversity loss, and climate change. And I think this requires us to reflect, and that's why for me these celebrations are important, but also to reimagine our approaches to addressing the challenges that the globe faces and our quest to achieve sustainable development. If you look at the report on Making Peace with Nature, it asks us to review how we relate with nature to ensure that there's greater sustainability. And I think it's in that context that the role of different stakeholders comes in. As I was thinking about what to say for this conversation, I reflected upon the principle 10 of the Rio Declaration that talks about the need for all citizens and all different stakeholders to engage in environmental governance. And as we celebrate also the 40 years of Montevideo, I think it underscores two things. It underscores generally the place of law, but specifically it underscores the place of environmental rule of law, something that again is captured in SDG 16 and SDG 17. As we move to the next decade, as we continue the implementation of the Montevideo Programme, for those who are part of the process, we'll be having a meeting next week. We need to ask ourselves, so how do we move from law in books to law in action? I am gratified that I now have the privilege of chairing the Association of Environmental Law Lecturers in Africa, an association that was established in 2004 here in Nakuru to eventually contribute through the role of the academy in terms of researching, in terms of developing, and in terms of generating the next cadre of environmental lawyers, environmental law scholars. Robert spoke that we are looking at the third generation, and ASELAO's contribution is to continue to generate the next generations. That when we reach the fourth, when we reach the fifth, we're able to have, I see my good friend from MENA, Professor Damilola, also here, working in the Middle East and Northern Africa to ensure that collectively the entire African continent has scholars that are being taught, scholars that are researching, and scholars that are looking at the intractable challenges that are facing the globe, so that we can ask ourselves, so what is the African perspective? What's the African voice in these international conversations? And how do we ensure that as we move towards the future, we are moving to a future which recognizes our reality and which looks at those realities from the African lens? I think it calls for greater partnerships. So we are very gratified to be partnering in these conversations with the judicial network. So we ask ourselves, what's the role of the judiciary? What's the role of civil society? What's the role of government? So I look forward as members of ARIEL to engaging all of us and to celebrating the milestones that we've reached, but make sure that these celebrations actually energize us to be able to even work much greater in terms of solving the challenges that we continue to face in the future. With those, I want to thank you very much and welcome you to the 2-hour conversation in terms of the place of partnerships. How can we network? How can we be able to leverage on our different strengths to be able to address the environmental challenges that face the globe? Thank you very much. And back to you, Sarah.
Sarah, you are muted.
Sorry, I still cannot hear Sarah. I don't know if it's just me.
Sarah, I think maybe your audio settings have somehow changed. No, unfortunately, we still can't hear you.
It's still not working, Sarah, unfortunately. No, unfortunately, we cannot hear you, and I can see the mute icon on Zoom. So, in addition to the changing of the sound settings, you're also currently muted on Zoom. For your information, Sarah. No, it was working before, but after Colin's intervention, we are not able to hear you again.
So perhaps if we can move to the next speaker. I don't have the latest agenda in front of me, unfortunately, but I think we have a representative from the African Judicial Network on Environmental Law who is going to make an intervention. So can I kindly invite you to take the floor and we'll resolve Sarah's audio issues.
Sorry, if I may, based on the latest version of the agenda, I was scheduled to speak next at this point.
Please
so
go
I'll
ahead.
just go ahead, yeah. As one of the organizers, the 3 set of welcoming remarks, very happy to have heard from UNEP, and we just heard from the Association of Environmental Lecturers in African Universities, and I was to speak wearing 3 different hats, in a sense. One hat being as the Deputy Chair of the IUC and World Commission on Environmental Law. The second, as one of the 2 elected regional facilitator, major groups and stakeholders for the African region within the UNEP space. And finally, as the director of the Hassan II International Center for Environmental Training. So very briefly, hopefully we're able to sort out Sarah's technical challenges that she's doing such a great job steering us along and moderating this event. I wanted to bring forward share a few elements. The very first actually was to express my admiration towards Georgina, who was in a meeting a few hours ago, and she had already been working and up for more than 12 hours nonstop as part of this marathon. And that was several hours ago. So very well done to you, Georgina, for your dedication, and for the rest of the organizers that are invested in supporting this important marathon, in particular UNEP and ARIEL. Regarding the specific session, partnerships to advance environmental law in Africa, I wanted to share some views on the four dimensions that I see in that title. The first of them being the dimension of partnerships. And as such, partnerships are so instrumental to us working together in environmental action in general, environmental law in particular. When it comes to environmental law and partnerships, as Deputy Chair of the IUCN Work Commission of Environmental Law, I'm very happy to see as among the speakers our dear friend, Dr. Jacob Salvador, who's very engaged in the IUCN Work Commission on Environmental Law, as well as, of course, Professor Kasimbasi, who's the chair of the IUCN Work Commission on Environmental Law Specialist Group on Biodiversity Law. Because evidently, as a partnership, as a network, the Work Commission on Environmental Law is very keen to further advancing and fostering the kind of investment we are keen to see globally, but in Africa as a particular area of interest. Myself as an African and as a deputy chair, I am particularly keen to support the advancement of that work from Tangiers to Cape Point, of course, all over Africa, all across the regions. The second, and also in terms of partnership, as one of the two elected regional facilitators for African major groups and stakeholders, I wanted to highlight this opportunity that exists within the UNEP space that is very important for African civil society stakeholders, be it from NGOs or academia or the private sector or trade unions, etc., or youth organization, to engage formally with the UNEP space and be in a position to contribute in terms of the, for example, earlier Professor Colin Sodote was referring to the work that took place in the context of UNEP at 50, the work that is ongoing in the context of Stockholm plus 50, and etc. And as such, African major groups and stakeholders are unfortunately often underrepresented. So I would strongly encourage you, if you are not currently affiliated to a major group, an African organization that is accredited to UNEP, to please look at the process and to engage with that process, as it is an important lever of visibility, learning, and co-construction. When it comes to the advancement itself as a concept, as was again recalled in the interventions earlier, there's all kinds of celebrations that are ongoing, and it's important to celebrate the progress. At the same time, it is also important to acknowledge the road that is still that we need to travel, whether it comes to the design of treaties or their implementation, and the support that is needed for their implementation of the legal frameworks that have been adopted at all levels. And as such, our continent, we have a tremendous amount of expertise, we have a tremendous amount of stakeholders that are engaged on the ground, but there is still very much a need for support. And as such, that is something that we must not be lost sight of when it comes to means of implementation and the historic responsibilities that certain jurisdictions have globally when it comes to the impacts of environmental decay and degradation that is felt because of the triple planetary crisis in the context of the African continent specifically and more globally. Finally, and that's the African component, last year in partnership with UNEP and the IUCN Work Commission on Environmental Law, Robert Wabunoha himself was part of the scientific committee at the Hassan II International Center for Environmental Training. We hosted the African Environmental Law Congress. I'm speaking to you from there. And I think it's important that beyond this ad hoc opportunity to engage across celebratory moments or moments where we look back or we look forward, we work together to engage in a more continuous manner so we can facilitate the kind of progress that we all want to see, that is to the advantage of the African priorities included when it comes to sustainable development, climate change, and addressing the triple planetary crisis. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Later, a colleague of mine will be saying sharing a few more words about the specific programs that we have in partnership with UNEP that I believe would be of interest to the participants here. And I hope that we, in the meantime, since I've been speaking, we've been able to sort out the technical challenges we were experiencing with our esteemed moderator, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Sarah, can I check if your audio is okay now?
Hello.
Yes, fantastic. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for stepping in, Georgina. We can now proceed. I think from what has been shared in the welcome remarks is that this has come a long way. A lot of brain has been put to task to actually shape the international environmental law, an environmental law that has been integrated into national laws that is guiding the use of environment resources and natural resources generally. And I think that Mr. Yaman ends with, there are platforms, and these platforms are facilitated and resourced, and everybody should really take the opportunity to embrace the opportunity that lies with these platforms for us to push forward the program and what was started 50 and 40 years ago. So thank you for the welcome remarks. We'll now invite the speaker on the An-African perspective on the Montevideo Law, Environmental Law Program, Dr. Paul Chihuelo. Dr. Paul, over to you, please.
It looks like Paul has dropped off, so I suggest you move to the next speaker, Sarah, and we can try and get Paul back.
Dr. Paul was to give us the Africa perspective on Montevideo Environmental Law Program, which would then lead us into that, the panel of speakers. But, we will still get him as advice. So I would now like to invite one of the speakers, Dr. Jacob Salvador from Burkina Faso. You are most welcome. I suspect we are having, can you hear me?
Yes, Sarah, we can hear you. Dr. Salvador was in and he seems to have dropped out too. Yeah, he's back.
Okay.
He's back. Dr. Salvador, please unmute.
Vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Ok. Bonjour tout le monde. Bonjour Emmanuel, notre vice-président de la Commission mondiale des droits de l'environnement. Bonjour Robert, l'ami de longue date. Je pense qu'on se connaît, est-ce qu'il n'y a même pas une vingtaine d'années dans ces travaux donc, du PNUE. Et vraiment, merci beaucoup de m'avoir impliqué dans cet événement où j'ai été invité pour partager un peu l'expérience d'un réseau africain que nous avons créé il y a un certain longtemps, avec justement donc lequel nous partageons donc beaucoup d'informations. En fait, c'est le réseau de l'Afrique francophone des juristes de l'environnement, appelé réseau RAFGE. Mais bien avant cela, je rappelle qu'actuellement, j'officie en tant que conseiller technique du ministère de l'Environnement l'énergie, de l'eau et de l'assainissement du Burkina Faso. Auparavant, j'ai travaillé à l'UICN, au Bureau Sénégal, Bureau Afrique de l'Ouest et du Centre de l'UICN. J'ai également fait un tour au bureau juridique de la FAO à Rome, au siège, donc, avec militantisme dans les associations nationales et internationales. Donc, justement, j'aimerais partager avec vous à propos donc, de ce réseau sur 4 points. D'abord, partager avec vous dans quel contexte le réseau a été créé. Ensuite, quels sont ses objectifs. Et ensuite, enseigner avec qui sont les membres où ils travaillent. Également, donc, terminer avec donc, la rubrique « Qu'est-ce que justement donc, les membres donc, du réseau au fond ». Disons, en termes donc, de contexte donc, de création donc, du réseau de l'Afrique francophone des juristes de l'environnement, nous disons que c'est un réseau qui a été créé donc, dans les années 2004-2005 à la faveur du projet PADELIA, Partenariat pour le développement des législations et institutions de l'environnement en Afrique, que Robert connaît très bien, puisque c'est un projet donc, de pionnier qui a été exécuté donc, dans 13 pays de l'Afrique, dont le Burkina Faso. J'ai eu la chance d'être coordinateur national donc, de ce projet PADELIA au Burkina Faso. Donc, disons que ce projet PADELIA a un peu suscité des rencontres justement, donc, qui ont permis aux juristes de l'Afrique francophone de se rencontrer à certaines rencontres. Et c'est de là qu'est née l'idée de voir comment en fait, nous pouvons nous mettre ensemble pour essayer donc, de faire évoluer, de promouvoir les droits de l'environnement en Afrique francophone. Disons aussi qu'à l'époque, bon, nous, juristes de l'environnement de l'Afrique francophone, on se disait qu'on était un peu défavorisés par rapport aux anglophones. Lorsqu'on se rencontre lors donc, des réunions, bon, des difficultés dans la langue fait qu'on se disait que les juristes francophones étaient un peu défavorisés. Donc, raison de plus justement donc, de créer donc, ce réseau pour essayer donc de faire valoir donc un peu leur point de vue et la prise en compte donc de leurs préoccupations donc dans ces différentes instances internationales. Donc voilà un peu le contexte dans lequel donc le réseau a été créé dans les années 2004-2005. Maintenant, quel est notre statut? Disons que nous sommes un réseau informel. Informel parce que nous n'avons pas voulu formaliser donc des réseaux donc pour plusieurs raisons, notamment pour éviter donc la lourdeur donc dans le fonctionnement, parce que si on se met justement donc dans la formalisation, il y a des contraintes, il y a l'élaboration des rapports, il y a un certain nombre de dépenses que nous sommes obligés donc de faire. Donc, il faut fortement donc insister donc des cotisations donc à l'endroit des membres, toutes choses qui semblent être assez complexes et difficiles. Voilà pourquoi nous avons préféré rester donc à l'informel. Peut-être aussi que c'est ce qui justifie donc notre longue vie. Et aussi, l'un des inconvénients aussi donc, du fait que nous soyons restés donc, à l'informel, c'est qu'il y a beaucoup donc, de sources de financement donc, qui nous échappent. Parce qu'en tant que réseau informel, on ne peut pas faire donc, des requêtes donc, de financement pour un certain nombre de nos activités. Alors, quels sont donc les objectifs donc, que nous poursuivons? Disons que le réseau de l'Afrique francophone des juristes de l'environnement a pour objectif la prise en compte des considérations environnementales dans les politiques publiques, les plans du programme de développement en Afrique francophone, l'appui aux États de l'Afrique francophone dans le développement et la mise en œuvre du droit et des politiques de l'environnement, l'appui aux organisations d'intégration économique de l'Afrique francophone ainsi que toute organisation internationale et régionale à développer et à mettre en œuvre le droit et les politiques communautaires régionaux visant la protection donc, de l'environnement, la contribution aux négociations des instruments juridiques visant la protection de l'environnement, engageant justement donc, les acteurs donc, de l'Afrique francophone, la contribution au renforcement des capacités des acteurs, la diffusion des textes, la publication des supports qui soient de nature à contribuer à la promotion du droit et des politiques de l'environnement. Voilà un peu les quelques objectifs donc, que nous poursuivons. Maintenant, qui nous sommes exactement? Disons que dans l'ensemble, nous sommes des juristes de l'environnement. Et entre parenthèses, exceptionnellement, nous avons accepté un géographe parmi nous, mais par la suite, il a été contraint donc de faire donc une spécialisation en droit de l'environnement. Je ne sais pas quel canal il a utilisé. Et nous avons aussi au début voulu rester des juristes francophones, mais l'expérience nous a montré que cette idée n'a pas valu à tout moment parce que nous avons eu beaucoup donc, de requêtes donc, de la part donc, des anglophones qui ont demandé donc, à adhérer donc, le réseau et donc bien naturellement, nous les avons acceptés. Ce qui fait qu'aujourd'hui, nous sommes autour de 220 membres, ici de 31 pays et de 12 institutions internationales et régionales. Disons qu'à l'intérieur du réseau, nous avons presque toutes les responsabilités. Nous avons des juristes de l'environnement dans les différents ministères, notamment dans les ministères de l'environnement et les départements ministériels connexes à l'environnement. Nous avons des universitaires, nous avons des avocats, nous avons des magistrats, quelques doctorants. Et nous avons aussi des ministres parmi nous. C'est ce qui fait aussi souvent notre force, des ministres qui sont membres du réseau. Nous avons également des fonctionnaires internationaux et communautaires. Voilà un peu la configuration justement donc, des membres donc, du réseau. Maintenant, qu'est-ce que nous faisons? Alors, qu'est-ce que nous faisons? Nous faisons beaucoup de choses, souvent sans tapage de tam-tam ni grand bruit. Alors, disons que nous agissons surtout à travers un mailing list. Comme je le disais au début, nous sommes un groupe informel et nous partageons souvent donc, beaucoup d'informations à travers donc, ce mailing, notamment précisément donc, des informations liées donc, au droit de l'environnement et à sa mise en œuvre. Nous partageons de façon occasionnelle donc, des vacances de poste au sein donc, des institutions internationales. Nous adoptons souvent donc, des déclarations que nous prenons. Nous prenons donc un certain nombre de positions par rapport à un certain nombre de faits. Je me souviens que lorsque on avait attaqué donc, les mosquées historiques de Tombouctou au Mali, qui constituent donc, des éléments donc, du patrimoine, nous avons fait une déclaration que nous avons publiée pour justement donc, exprimer donc, notre indignation. Et ensuite, il y a eu beaucoup de déclarations que nous avons adoptées donc, et publiées donc, à travers donc, certains réseaux, et justement donc, pour prendre donc, des positions par rapport à un certain nombre de situations. Disons que nous appuyons aussi les États dans l'élaboration et l'adoption du droit de l'environnement, c'est-à-dire des textes juridiques visant donc, la protection de l'environnement. Et disons que l'une des particularités donc, du réseau, c'est que souvent, le réseau passe par des personnes, c'est-à-dire par certains de ses membres, qui sont des grands responsables, des décideurs au sein donc, des ministères en charge de l'environnement, qui sont également donc, des ministres de l'environnement. Donc, le réseau passe souvent donc, par ces personnalités-là pour faire passer un certain nombre de résolutions à un certain nombre d'instances. On les fait souvent dans les instances donc, du PNUE, du Programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement. On les fait souvent donc, dans les instances donc, de l'UA, l'Union africaine. On les fait également donc, à travers donc, certaines rencontres donc, de l'ONU. Donc, à travers justement dans toutes ces instances où nous avons donc, la participation des pays, le réseau peut passer par des grands responsables au sein des départements ministériels ou des ministres pour faire passer un certain nombre d'idées, un certain nombre de résolutions. Nous appuyons également donc, actuellement la publication de la revue africaine des droits de l'environnement avec la participation d'un certain partenaire technique et financier. Et nous appuyons également donc, l'organisation donc, de colloques internationaux et régionaux. Donc, voilà en fait, grosso modo, ce que nous faisons. Nous sommes souvent dans la discrétion, mais très efficace. Parce qu'au niveau donc, de certaines instances internationales, il y a des choses qui s'adoptent, qu'on adopte, et qui sont une idée originale du réseau, mais passées donc par quelqu'un d'autre pour les présenter. On peut même passer donc notre idée donc, à un État, à travers donc, un ministre, ou à travers donc, un autre décideur pour les faire passer. Donc voilà grosso modo ce que j'avais voulu partager avec vous sur le réseau de l'Afrique francophone des juristes de l'environnement. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Dr. Jacob. I'm not sure whether you Okay, Dr. Yakub, thank you so much for sharing with us your experience on the French-speaking network of lawyers in Africa. There are several achievements indeed that you have mentioned, and without really repeating them again, I think I note the fact that it has enabled you to work together to, push forward common issues of concern. You have also made contributions as a region to the global agenda and effectively participated in the process by working on resolutions. And you have also been able to reach out to the policymakers and political heads to continue pushing the message forward. I think the next speaker, I don't know whether we now have Dr. Paul, because when I check on the number of people available, I think we haven't gotten him yet. So I will then invite the second speaker, Professor Emanuel Kasimbasi, to address us.
Yes, good afternoon, my colleagues. I see so many faces that I've met before, and I'm glad to see you virtually. Virtual meetings are also good because at least you see the face, apart from hearing the voice. So I'm glad to see you virtually, and also I thank UNEP and also my vice chair for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. First of all, as a way to start, I realize that when we are celebrating 50 years, it is called Golden Jubilee, which means really UNEP is an old man. He's an old man, he's about to retire. So if he hasn't performed, that's a challenge. But also 40 years, which is Ruby Jubilee, is equally old. So we need to assess ourselves and see whether really we have achieved at this age, because when you are 50 or 40, you have actually grown. First of all, maybe to introduce myself, I'm Emanuel Kasimbasi. I teach at the School of Law, Makerere University, but at the same time, as my vice chair, I am, and has said, the chair of Biodiversity Law Specialized Group, and my deputy chair is Dr. Michelle Lim, based at Macquarie Law School. And this Biodiversity Specialized Group is new, but we provide really, specialized and technical advice to ICN related to biodiversity issues. So we have programs, so I therefore invite you to join us. We have a lot of work to do. So I take this opportunity to invite you to join our specialized group. We are new and fresh, and we are only actually maybe 3 months old, so we are still a baby. So there is a lot you can contribute to this specialized, specialized group. So the focus of this session, I am told, is building partnership to advance environmental law. And as we start, as you know, we need to ask ourselves, what would happen if there was no environmental law in Africa? Or what would happen if there was no international environmental law? That should be our starting question. And if we don't have it, and if we don't have the answer, then that's a challenge. But my view is that environmental law is very, very important because it is a major component that regulates environmental management. And without it, we cannot achieve sustainable development. And it is actually which guides really the institutions, governments, in order to respond actually to national priorities and also the needs to address environmental issues of international concern. But also we need to appreciate that when we advance environmental law, we build capacity with a view of achieving maximum leverage and also to get resources on the ground in order to achieve what we are supposed to achieve. Now, when you, as Robert has said, Robert have worked with him, I think, for many years. Well, I'm sure Robert knows, and other members, that Africa has been really developing environmental law for the 30 years. When you look at most countries, you find since the 90s, I think, as Robert said, there have been really development in terms of environmental legislation, including even constitutional provisions on environment, and they have also developed framework environmental laws, and they also have gone on to develop what people would call social and environmental safeguards to deal with environmental issues. And actually, also we need to appreciate that local, national, and regional efforts have been really, have taken place, especially there was a project, partnership for the development of environmental law and institutions in Africa, which was under UNEP, and actually that contributed a lot as far as developing environmental is concerned. But the question is, are we there? Where are we? What has happened? Because when you look at most of these African countries, you'll find that the implementation is still very low. You'll find that it's very low, the enforcement is still very low, and environmental degradation is still going on. But of course, there are challenges that we have, which would include political decisions, administrative decisions, of course, social and economic, and legal issues, that concern the environmental law enforcement. So it's still a challenge. So why do we need to advance partnerships, to ensure, rather, why do we need to ensure partnerships in order to advance environmental law? I think one of the issues we need to address is how do we advance partnerships? Then later, we need to look at the question, what do we need to do in order to advance partnerships? So if I start with the question of how, one, I think we need to identify all of the institutions that are relevant. I've been doing some work in SADC. I realize there are so many environmental organizations, but they are not known. They are not known in the region. I'm not sure whether even UNEP knows them. So we need to identify them. Now, when we do that, we give them the opportunity to play their role, to build the partnerships. For example, all of these NGOs, are they giving the opportunity to play their role? The universities where we do capacity building, are they given the opportunity to play their role? Because you see, without capacity building, then there's a problem. Then the other question, rather the other way, how do we deal with how is to connect field actors to national, regional, and even global policy makers. For example, when you are dealing with environmental law is not in court. I even tell my law students that environmental law is in the field. You need to go there and see what is happening in order to be a good environmental lawyer. So we need to connect these environmental lawyers. We need to connect to them, the policymakers, to the field actors, to see what is there. If you go and see, for example, in the oil region, they call it oil region in Western Uganda, what is happening there? What is happening to the women? What is happening to the local community? So that we are able really to develop that partnership and then go ahead. Then the second really, way of dealing with how is to enrich partnerships of institutions. For example, you'll find that most institutions don't have funding. So is there any way we can get co-funding? For example, to train environmental law. Even in the local languages, you see, we don't need to train environmental to have a LLB. No, even a local person should be able to understand the principle of environmental law in order to protect the environment. So we also need to consider that. Then we also need to, as I've already said, to ready for additional skills for example, public participation in environmental, social environmental impact assessment issues. Of course, these social skills should come from Africa and also outside Africa. For example, Asia. What experiences can we get from Asia in Africa? Then also we need to support local actors. Most NGOs are seen as enemies of government. Actually, even in Uganda here, they are seen, some have even been registered. but how do we support them? Provide technical solutions, facilitating the processes of dialogue so that we are able to achieve really sustainable development. Now let me deal with the last question. What needs to be done to further, environmental law in Africa? One, I think we need to strengthen partnerships to address the environmental challenges. For example, I've been doing some work on wildlife crime. I've realized that most of these wildlife products are going to Asia. So we need to see how do we develop partnerships between, for example, Interpol, or all these organizations, even NEMA, Uganda, or even Uganda Wildlife Authority, to enforce environmental law, even wildlife crime, to deal with issues of wildlife illegal trade. You see, because you'll find the pangolins, the all that are going to Asia. How do we control that? Through partnership, of Asia and Africa. Then another really area we need to do in terms of what needs to be done is capacity building. Capacity building, I've already said, capacity building does not mean to go to the law school and do even have masters or PhD, whatever. But capacity building for even at the local level, so that even in a local language, somebody can be able to know what does environmental impact assessment mean. What does scoping mean, you see? Because scoping or even screening is part of enforcement of environmental law. So we need really to appreciate that. But also we need to increase opportunities, opportunities to advance the use of rule of law. For example, somebody was trying to say that for a long time, I think Sarah was involved with Greenwatch. We haven't had really serious environmental law cases being filed in court in Uganda. Why? See, how are we using the opportunities we have, for example, to enforce or to promote, environmental litigation? Because you see, without that, that becomes a problem. But also, as I've already said, we need to strengthen partnership between civil society, government, academic institutions, development partners. For example, I don't think there's need to believe that civil society organizations are enemies of government. How do we make sure that we are able to work together to achieve sustainable development? Then the other way we can reach is also how are we harnessing the opportunities from the post-2015 development agenda? Because there are many things that have come up, especially the funding under the Paris Agreement, and even before, everywhere you go, you'll find people talking about Red Plus. How are we harnessing the opportunities for the local communities, for the indigenous people, so that they are able also to participate in implementing international, international obligations, even including the wetlands management. Then another area that we need to do is how do we implement regional strategy? For example, I would be excited to see that we are partnering with African Union. African Union, of course, UNEP, or now UN Environment. How do you partner with African Union? How do you partner with other regional economic communities to make sure that environmental law is achieved there? I have been working with East African community, but when you go there, you realize that environmental law is not felt, you see, and yet that's key. We have Lake Victoria, we have oil, but yet the ESC, which is a regional body, you don't see really environmental law being felt. Even IGAD, you don't see, there's need to do more really at the African Union level, because these are political organizations with heads of state, with ministers, or even AMSEN, for example. I want to see more activities, more impact created by AMSEN. As I said, I just wanted to provoke questions and discussions, but also to see how do we strengthen partnership to make sure that, because without environmental law, the world will not be okay. Because at one time I attended a seminar. Actually, it was an international conference, and one of the speakers was telling us that when we are talking of sustainable development, it is not 20 years from now, it is tomorrow. When there are floods, we are all affected. Even the next day, you can have floods, you see. So sustainable development is now, and we need to achieve it now. So thank you, Sarah, for giving me the opportunity, and that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Professor. To actually receive yet another lecture and insight on what we can do. I think he brings on board several points that we should not leave unattended. Can we identify all the relevant actors across the region? I think all relevant, including to the lowest point possible. I think that's what he's finding roles, availing opportunities through the networks and platforms that we have. I think this is achievable, and all the rest will definitely be a success. I congratulate you, Professor, on starting a new network. It is to fill a gap that I believe is indeed and existing. I now would like, we are running out of time. I am informed that we only have now 40 minutes to end the symposium, and yet I have 3 more speakers to go. So I now want to invite the next speaker. I see that Paul is here, and he was supposed to highlight, maybe he will come after Mr. Kamara, so that then we can wrap up. I also remind you that there's a Q&A page. Please post any questions that you would like us to pay attention or to address during this symposium. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Kamara. Hello, Mr. Kamara?
Gabriela, unmute. Gabriela, you are muted.
I think while he sorts, I don't know, he's not making any signs. Could you make any signs to show whether you're having problems with the audio? Because I think I had a similar problem earlier. Okay, we will now have Dr. Paul, and later after him, we will have Dr. Kamara.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, dear delegates and participants of the symposium. Yeah, my name's Paul Faustin Kiwelo. I'm the Justice of Appeal in Tanzania, but I also happen to be the principal of the Judicial Training Institute back here. My apologies, actually, I came very late to join you. We had a longer session. We are currently actually in Court of Appeal session, so I'm just actually coming out of the Court of Appeal session. So I think I'll be, and I must apologize, actually. I was not able to follow. I just joined when the professor was just trying to wrap up. So I believe maybe I can have something to share. Yeah, maybe briefly, well, we are marking the 3 critical events actually today. I think the 5th anniversary of the Stockholm Declaration, with the 5th anniversary of the UNEP, and the 30th anniversary of the. So otherwise, I think as we mark this, these are very important events. It's a high time that we take stock actually of the milestone that we've been able to achieve, but also the challenges that we faced over the years in order to to try to figure out actually where are we supposed to be going in the next couple of years to come. We all understand actually the Rio, which is so far it's almost 30 years, as well as the other critical milestone on environmental law. These are very critical for us, and not only in Africa but at the global level. I will, in the course of my sharing remarks, I'll focus more basically, of course, on the role of the judiciary, but also, of course, the role of academia. If I can highlight, of course, way back when some of us went to university in the 90s, environmental law actually was just at the very periphery. It was actually, for us, it was taught as part and parcel of international law. Its importance was not so much felt, not actually in terms of the impact, but of course it was not given the requisite importance it ought to have been given, especially in the academia. And there are not so much jurisprudence that were developed by the judiciary by then. But over time, actually, I think we've been able to achieve significant gains. The judicial, of course, especially sharing the experience, of course, where I am. I head the institute whereby environmental law is not so very much actually, is not very much. It is being told. Environmental law actually is one of the commonly that judicial officers are trained. At various levels, but in particular, when it comes to during the induction, when judges are recruited for the first time, they are trained, of course, in environmental law, not as a standalone subject, but this is something that is done during induction. And also, of course, especially for those who went to universities way back, actually, they are not taught environmental law at school, but currently environmental law is being taught at various levels. So at least you find that, of course, the environmental law is given that is particular significance in as far as the at the university level is concerned, but also, of course, on the judiciary as such. I heard a professor speaking about actually the training on wildlife. This is something actually for us, wildlife being one of the transnational crimes, it has been given a significant importance within the judiciary. We have a specific actually division of the High Court that deals actually with the corruption and economic crimes, and wildlife is one of the critical crimes that are being dealt with. Given the fact that we understand as a country that there is a lot of the environmental wildlife crimes, if not curbed, then for the significant, they have actually serious ramification to our own countries. So this is one of the areas where we are giving that particular actually special attention, not only as part of environmental law, but as part and parcel of transnational crimes. And we all know actually how wildlife crimes can have serious implication to the society. So this is taught actually as part and during the over time, but also as I said, environmental law is being taught as part and parcel of land-related crimes, which is to us in Africa, of course, also very serious because there are serious issues that relates to environmental land issues. So when as we celebrate actually these the 5th anniversary of the Stockholm Declaration, the 5th anniversary of the UNEP, and 30th anniversary of Rio Declaration, I understand in Africa not much have been done so far because we understand that there are a lot of challenges actually. Land degradation, environmental. There are also a number of deforestation. Actually, I think it's also coming at a very alarming rate. And of course, the problem we also know that of course poverty also is also a challenge because as the people are living in the rural areas. for them actually telling them to use renewable energy is still actually is a challenge. But these are issues that I think we should be grappling with, and we should be trying. We should be able to see how best we can try as much as possible to ensure that these alternative energies are also they also translate. Actually, they also trickle down to the rural communities, so that it is they're able to preserve the environment. So on coming actually talking of course on the part of the judiciary itself, I think the judiciary has a critical role to play. We are all aware of the environmental rule of law. On environmental rule of law, I think this is an area that we need to, as much as possible, to ensure that it is these are areas that we develop. And luckily enough, actually, for the judiciaries in Africa and the judicial training institutes, I think Professor have just highlighted the importance of trying to connect with others or networking, which I think is a very critical role. For us in Africa, actually, we currently, within our judiciary, we have a network of judicial training institutes, which have a critical role of trying to build the capacity of judiciaries to ensure that judiciaries are at the forefront when it comes to environmental rule of law, and coming up with a jurisprudence that will help to a large extent, it is to ensure that judiciaries are also at the forefront of trying to protect environmental degradation, and of course all issues that will have negative impact to the advancing the protection of the environment, both protection and promotion of environment. So these are issues that the judicial in Africa, actually, when it comes to collaboration, we currently have actually a network of judicial training institutes whereby we build the capacity, we share our own meager resources that we have, we share experience from our different judiciaries in Africa, and ensure that at least we are able to share it, advance further. And we think by doing so, although challenges are still there, but I think in a way we'll be able at least to try to a larger extent to ensure that at least the judiciaries or our own judiciaries have a significant contribution in the area of environmental law. I understand, as I said, actually not much have been, we have not done much, but at least I think I can see light at the end of the tunnel. If more will be done, and of course, using the collaboration that we have, we've been able actually to get a general support also from our colleagues, especially in Brazil, because we've been collaborating, and of course, most of us in Africa, we are part of the global Judicial Institute on Environment, which is actually one of the institutes which is trying to advance the environmental rule of law in the world. So I understand, and I think I'm very sure if you are able to seize the opportunity of trying to collaborate with others, I'm sure I'll be able to try at least to advance further. But all the same, the role, what we are trying to do, as the professor just highlighted at the end when I just joined, it is very important for us to ensure that at least whatever we do is able to trickle down to the societies, to the societies. But also, it's very important, as our professor just highlighted, within the African continent, within let's say the East Africa community, we have our community. I think we should also see the opportunity. If not much is done within the East Africa community, then of course, I think it is high time for us, all of us, to ensure that our regional blocks, these regional and interregional blocks, we should ensure that at least we are able also to have impact in those by ensuring that at least the issues of environmental protection and environmental law, these are issues that are given high stake. I understand challenges are always there, but of course, I think challenges are there to be faced, the problems are there to be solved. So if all of us are able to work together, I am sure actually the existing challenges will be sorted out. As I pointed out, we are just grappling as of now. Currently, I think we are having a curriculum on environmental training for that have been adopted by a number of judicial training institutes in Africa. I'm very sure not so many of our judicial training institutes have started yet implementing that curriculum. But if you are able to implement that curriculum, I know judicial officers have a significant contribution when it comes to environmental rule of law and environmental protection as far as the interpretation of laws and other related issues are concerned. So I think that is all I wanted to share for the time being, and my apologies actually if I've not been able to meet some of your expectations. As I told you, actually I'm just running, I just came out of the courtroom shortly, but for the remaining minutes, maybe I'll be able to share if having heard from the hearing from the other participants, but also I'm really available to reply if there be any questions that have to be directed to me. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Dr. Paul, and indeed, thank you for making time to join us from your busy schedule. I think that you have highlighted the fact that judiciary has promoted the principle of access to justice and equity in the use of resources. And the issue of poverty remaining a challenge is a good debate for us to contend. I can see Dr. Kamara is back. I will invite you to make your presentation so that we save time for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I have a screen to share. Okay. Sarah, can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Just to jump in, there might be a bit of a special process that applies to share PowerPoint presentations. If you could double check with Georgina and the team in terms of the technical support to share a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
I have made Mr. Gibson
So then
a co-host, so he should be able to share screen, but I think he might have, his internet might have frozen.
Okay, so he's having connection issues. If I may perhaps have a suggestion at this point, if we could move, given the time constraints, as we sort out the internet, if you could move to Zainab and then revert back to Jibrila. She also has 4 slides to share, I believe.
Present probably what I have, maybe without sharing.
Oh, you can go ahead. Yeah, if the internet, as you prefer, we submit to the preference of the moderator, as Sarah prefers. Yeah.
okay. Dr. Kamara, if you will share without, or you would like to wait. Then.
Can you see the presentation now?
You're ready. Is this your presentation?
Can you see the presentation, Sarah?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you. Sorry for the internet connectivity, and that is one of the problems I think African states have to solve. Internet connectivity. I think it's a problem that we have to solve to address environmental issues, especially now when we have to conduct our programs and our meeting through online. So, and we have poor internet here in Sierra Leone. So that's the problem. In any case, I'm going to be brief with my presentation, Building Partnership to Advance Environmental Law in Africa.
Kamara, we can't hear you. Dr. Kamara, we cannot hear you. I think your network is weak. We will now, okay, thank you. We will now move to Dr. Kamara. We can't hear you. And I think we have to move to
Can you hear me, Sarah? Can you hear me?
Okay, let's give it one more try and then see.
Okay.
Maybe.
So, yes. You can present now without. So I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to look at partnership at two levels, at regional level and also at national level. Partnership at the international level. The first thing I want to say is that we must understand the linkages among global and regional governance mechanisms like the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the 2063 African Agenda, and the Paris Agreement to effectively implement environmental rule of law. And then the next point I would like to make is that we must implement environmental law through partnerships and stakeholder engagement at international level and also at local level. And clearly, the Montevideo Programme 5 makes partnership and stakeholders engagement as core pillar for the successful implementation of environmental law. And then the program under paragraph 4E aspires to support collaboration and promote partnership across the United Nations and other entities relevant in the implementation of environmental rule of law. Now I'm going to look at partnership at the international level and particularly what we've been doing in Africa as a region. As a region, Africa is taking steps to promote partnership and foster collaboration through, for example, the establishment of a network of national focal points for Montevideo Environmental Law Programme 5 as a regional intergovernmental platform to promote dialogue.
Dr. Kamara, we can't hear you anymore. And because of time, we are going to move to the next speaker, Ms. Zainabu Rashid. And then we will try you one more time, if at all, but we are running very short of time. Ms. Zainabu, please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. I hope you can hear me very well. If you just
yes, go ahead.
Perfect. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me as a speaker for this interesting session celebrating the progressive development of environmental law. And after hearing the intervention of the different speakers, I can say that this event is representing the consistent effort in presenting different interactions between relevant stakeholders for this 24-hour celebration for environmental law. I would like to kindly invite, you're already doing it for this slide, thank you so much. So I will be presenting very briefly the African Green Universities and Youth Education Network that is hosted at the International Center Hassan II for Environmental Training, which is the pedagogical entity of the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection that was established in June 2001 at the initiative of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, and Her Royal Highness Princess Lala Hasna has been entrusted the effective presidency of the foundation and the center from the beginning. So the center is entirely dedicated to raising awareness on environmental projects and education among all target groups, from children, civil society, business, private sector, administration, local government entities, and other relevant stakeholders. So this center is a key element for the foundation. It allows us, with the support of all our national and international partners and experts, to design pedagogy, to deploy it, and to teach directly, and especially to transmit the knowledge and values that are respectful for our environment. And through an integrated vision of ESD, the Hassan II International Environmental Training Center prepares future generations to integrate environmental education and to instill in them the concepts of sustainability. So this transversal approach is highlighted through the promotion of several initiatives and programs that we have coordinated with our national and international partners. I don't know if we can go to the next slide, please. So in the continuity of, if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. In continuity to the educational programs that existed for 20 years, the Hassan II International Center for Environmental Training launched in March 2001 in partnership with the United Nations Environment Programme, the African Green Universities and Youth Education Network, and is based on three main pillars: education, training, and networking. So this network aims to promote the integration of environmental and sustainable development concerns into teaching, research, community engagement, and university management, while seeking to improve the skills of future generation. So the main mission of AGUYEN, African Green Universities and Youth Education Network, is to act as a sustainable leader for higher education and youth networks on the African continent, and to promote the concept of campus sustainability. So for the next slide, I just wanted to share with you numbers that are related to the network. Our network includes up to today.
Zainabu, if you could slow down, if you could speak slowly for interpretation purposes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Our network includes 30 African universities from 9 African countries, counting Morocco, Tunisia, Mauritania, Senegal, Comoros, Ivory Coast, Kenya, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So as part of this network, we were able to carry out several capacity building workshops and webinars on topics related to the establishment of a sustainable campus, on practices related to the realization of composting at the university level, the valuation of water and energy through the application of sustainable solutions, also the leadership role of universities in combating climate change and other environmental issues. Also through the AGUYEN network, 5 Moroccan universities have been engaged into the Race to Zero campaign and signed for a climate plan to reach the net to zero targets by 2030, and thus to contribute to the global carbon neutrality. So for this year of the network's existence, the foundation has been, and the center have been able to strengthen the commitment of to African youth and African universities, so that they can effectively appropriate environmental issues and then contribute to awareness raising effort at their own level. So apart from promoting good greening practices at the campus level and involving young university students, the network's vision is to create a platform for exchanging and networking between different African universities, and thereby strengthening the South-South cooperation. We also actually have organized a workshop in partnership with UNEP last Thursday on the Little Book of Green Nudges, which is a concise book of regrouping 40 best practices that each university can implement, and at its level to synthesize the community to protect the environment. Again, we could not establish this network without a solid partnership that increased the release of knowledge, expertise, and enabled us also to reach out to a wider community, as well as at the same occasion, if African universities are present among us who are interested in joining the network, they are most welcome. For the last slide, I'm sharing my contact information. Do not hesitate to reach out to me or to the center. So I thank you for your time and would like to invite you to share with us if any good practices are present at the university level, or if you have noticed at the university. Thank you so much, and I will be also sharing my contact information at the chat because I'm not seeing it on the slides. Thank you so much. Oh, perfect.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Zainabu, for the presentation. I see that you were indeed part of the team that has put us together, and that's enabled us to convene the symposium. And the several achievements that you have made. I don't know whether Dr. Kamara is able to share, but maybe in 3 minutes so that we are able to at least allow a session for questions and answers before we close. Dr. Kamara.
Can you see my screen? Hello?
We can't see your screen, but we would rather you give us a summary of your points in the 3 minutes so that we are,
great.
Yes.
So yes. So as I said, I'm going to look at partnership at 2 levels, very briefly, at international and national level, using Sierra Leone as a case study. At international level, we are building partnership with African countries. We have set up a network of national focal points for Africa, where we dialogue, where we communicate, where we share ideas and see how we can develop pathways to develop a program to implement the Montevideo Programme 5. And then at African level also, we are partnering with, for example, the African lecturers, the African network of African lecturers, and we are connecting this partnership to universities. For example, in Sierra Leone, we are connecting the University of Makeni with that network, which has trained some lecturers there to develop curriculum and also how to assess programs in environmental law at their universities. And then we have also ensured that we partner with the Green Environment Fund. We have been in dialogue with them to ensure that they look at how they can align their programs with the Montevideo Programme and the program for the network of African focal point. So we are making progress in that direction. Now, coming down to the national level, I think we have a unique case we have to present, which I wish I could have had the opportunity to show the screen so that you see actually what we are doing. As I speak, I'm in the provinces. I'm not in the capital city of Freetown. I'm in the provinces with judges, 15 judges and 10 magistrates. We are actually bringing them to see environmental degradation in physical sense, so that when these issues come before their courts, they are able to appreciate them. They are able to know the scale of degradation, and then they can they can get an informed decision to deliver judgments and rulings in these matters. And then what we have done again through the support of UNEP and United Nations Environment Programme, Law and Environment Assistance Program, we have access support to develop regulation on air quality and pollution. As I speak, one of the very serious development challenges Sierra Leone is facing is air quality and pollution. So through the support of UNEP, thankful to the support of Robert to always share information to us in the network and also coordinating African national focal point to ensure that they access these funding windows. So we have also conducted an assessment on the legal and policy framework on environment, on air quality and pollution in Sierra Leone. And we have received some important findings, and those findings have informed us to develop a regulation. As I speak, we are in the process of completing the first draft of that regulation. And then the next thing I want to bring to your notice is the fact that we have conducted we are not only looking at international conferences, we are also organizing national conferences where we bring national stakeholders, the judiciary, MBAs, civil society organizations, international development partners to dialogue on issues of environment and see how we can find solutions to address these issues. So we are making also progress on that. And we have decided as a country to ensure that these conferences are not one-off. We conduct them periodically and see how we can chart the way forward to address environmental issues. And then the next thing I want to bring to your notice is the fact that, as I said earlier on, the African Environmental Law Lecturers Network.
Well, thank you so much.
Has developed, has had some direct links with some universities in Sierra Leone, for example, the University of Makeni, and had trained some of those lecturers within their university curriculum so that we can enhance and also promote the interest of, currently we are also in negotiation of with the law school to ensure that we also mainstream environmental law education at the law school. And then the other thing I would like to bring to your notice is the fact that we are not just developing environmental laws. We are also finding pathways to implement them very, very effectively. So now we are establishing, for example, school nature clubs in all the schools in this country, so that the young generation, the young ones, become so much aware at an early age on environmental issues and how they can take part effectively to addressing them. And then we are involved in local communities as well in terms of forming citizens community initiative to implement environmental law. And the most important thing I think
Dr. Kamara, I don't think we can hear you. And we are constrained with time. I don't know if there is any burning question to the speakers that can be raised from the audience. Otherwise, we should be closing. So thank you, Dr. Kamara. I think you have shared and highlighted several issues. From the audience, any questions to the panelists? I do not see any hand up to the panelists, but I picked on one issue, the mention that poverty remains a challenge to, basically access to environmental justice or even enforcement of environmental law. What would be the take? That's a very probably heavy debate for the time remaining. And I wonder whether there's anything that could be said, could be posted. I see a hand from Mr. Kamara, you have 2 hands. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to respond to the issue of poverty. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we conducted a study on the relationship between the environment and local community people. And then in that study suggests that poverty, lack of livelihood option, unemployment are the key drivers to environmental degradation. So if we were to address environmental issues, we have to tackle poverty. And again, that will also speak to the fact that when we address poverty, we are actually addressing the SDGs, goal 1 of the SDGs. And then addressing goal 1 of the SDGs basically means we are also addressing environmental problems. So when people are lifted from poverty to prosperity, they can contribute meaningfully towards environmental protection. We can take them away from overdependence in natural resources and then save our planet. So poverty is a key driver for environmental degradation.
Thank you. The key issue here is whether it has sabotaged and avoided, helped or affected building of partnerships. I see another hand, but we are constrained by time. We are constrained by time. And Mr. Kamara, I'm sorry, I will not give you a chance again. I see, I can't, I'm sorry, I cannot push us beyond this time unless I'm assured that we have more time from Georgina, but we basically head for the closing. So,
Sarah, I think Mr. Yakuba wanted to say a final word, and then we move to the closing.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we will have Dr. Salvador say something before we close.
Merci beaucoup pour cette réunion. J'aimerais un peu réagir par rapport à la dernière préoccupation soulevée par Sarah, par rapport à la pauvreté. Effectivement, la pauvreté, nous, quand nous citons un peu les causes donc, de la faible mise en œuvre du droit de l'environnement, notamment dans les pays d'Afrique francophone, il y a la pauvreté. Mais nous le citons donc en tant que cause indirecte. Parce que ce n'est pas la pauvreté qui intervient directement, mais ce sont les impacts de la pauvreté. Je prends par exemple, elle a parlé donc de l'accès à la justice. Aujourd'hui, si vous prenez donc un procès judiciaire, il coûte extrêmement cher. Parce qu'un procès judiciaire, qu'il soit civil ou pénal, il n'est jamais gratuit. Ça engage beaucoup de fonds. Et généralement, donc, qui ne sont pas donc, à la disponibilité donc, de nos communautés dans le cas. Donc, quand il y a une certaine lèse, c'est-à-dire une certaine infraction en matière d'environnement qui leur cause donc préjudice, mais compte tenu du fait qu'ils n'ont pas assez de moyens pour porter donc l'affaire donc devant les tribunaux, alors ils préfèrent donc se résigner et peut-être trouver donc des solutions alternatives. Mais ce problème de pauvreté au niveau donc de la justice, nous l'avons toujours dit, il faudrait que l'accès à la justice se fasse donc à un coût réduit. Ça, il faut que les pays donc le comprennent. Voilà. Et si je prends un autre exemple donc, de la pauvreté donc, en matière de protection, prenons par exemple les populations donc, des pays sahéliens, notamment donc, le Burkina Faso. Ou si vous prenez donc en milieu rural, 90% du bois, de l'énergie est possible donc, grâce donc, au bois de chauffe. Et ces bois-là, les femmes partent les setter en brousse. Alors souvent, ils trouvent donc du bois mort. Mais en d'autres temps aussi, il ne trouve pas du bois mort. Donc, il coupe un peu l'arbre et cesse donc la branche pour pouvoir donc avoir du bois. Alors, nous avons dit l'alternative pour réduire donc, sur la pression justement, sur les ressources forestières, c'est de trouver donc des ressources alternatives. Nous avons évoqué donc le gaz, mais toujours est-il que le gaz n'est pas donc d'un accès donc aussi facile. Donc, voilà quelques liens directs ou indirects donc d'impact entre donc, la pauvreté et la protection donc, de l'environnement, notamment donc, en matière donc, de droits de l'environnement.
Sarah, unmute.
Sarah, you're muted. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you so much. The linkage was whether poverty has frustrated the partnerships that we have created across the region and all the other interventions that partnerships come up with. But I would say that from this symposium, we take forward several points of achievements over the 40 years that environmental law has evolved. We have achieved access to information. There's a lot of sharing information that has been integrated and informed the instruments that guide us. We have also had access to environmental justice assured to all and by the judiciary. We have also had jurisprudence developed over time, and this has continued to guide on how we could effectively challenge decisions or even process. And then, of course, connections and networking. But from the deliberations also emerges that there's a lot that we should be able to do. We should be able to reach out to all the members that, the stakeholders that should be members in a partnership. And to each member that is on board, a role and opportunity to engage and contribute should be given. There's a lot that we have discussed indeed in the 1.5 hours, but we have to end the process. And now it's my pleasure to invite the president of the Youth on Climate in Africa, the Youth Task Force for Climate in Africa, Mr. Mesiga, to close the symposium. You're welcome.
Oui, thank you so much. Je vais faire ma présentation en français. Alors, avant de commencer mes propos, je tiens tout d'abord à remercier les organisateurs de l'honneur qu'ils me font en m'associant, en tout cas, aux travaux de ce webinaire dans le cadre de ce panel, et ce faisant en donnant la parole donc à la jeunesse. Mes remerciements vont en particulier à M. Cherkaoui. Pour la jeunesse africaine, la célébration du 40e anniversaire du programme de Montevideo et les 50 ans du droit international de l'environnement pourrait sembler anodine. Pour autant, aussi bien le programme de Montevideo que le droit international de l'environnement méritent que l'on s'arrête, en tout cas le temps d'un webinaire, dans le cadre d'un panel pour réfléchir au partenariat pour faire progresser le droit de l'environnement. Certes, s'agissant du programme de Montevideo, il fut considéré, en tout cas à l'époque de sa création, par Alexandre Cherkis comme étant, sans aucun doute, l'événement international le plus important dans le domaine du droit international de l'environnement. De fait, le lien entre les deux mécanismes de protection semble incontestablement établi, le premier étant au service du second. Par ailleurs, alors que le programme de Montevideo était à sa 4e version en 2018, le secrétaire général des Nations Unies avait établi un rapport technique à la demande de l'Assemblée générale en application de la résolution 72-277 de celle-ci. Ce rapport, fondé sur des données factuelles, devait recenser et évaluer les lacunes éventuelles du droit international de l'environnement et des textes relatifs à l'environnement. Au paragraphe 84 de ce rapport technique, le secrétaire général des Nations Unies note que la tendance dans le domaine de la gouvernance internationale de l'environnement demeure à l'élargissement de la gamme des acteurs dont on considère qu'ils ont un rôle légitime et important à jouer. Parmi ces acteurs non étatiques, le rapport met un accent particulier sur les grands groupes, les femmes, les enfants et les jeunes. Dans le cadre de la clôture de ce panel, j'aimerais donc interroger le rôle que peuvent jouer les jeunes Africains dans la perspective de faire progresser le droit international de l'environnement. Nous verrons donc qu'il s'agit en réalité d'un partenariat actif qui peut avoir une portée limitée du fait des résistances liées aux défis africains, nécessitant donc des approches de solutions. D'abord, quel type de partenariat pour la jeunesse africaine? Il faut ici noter que les actions des jeunes en faveur de l'environnement en Afrique existent et sont multiformes, même si elles peuvent rencontrer des résistances liées notamment au manque d'informations, aux instabilités politiques qui détournent l'attention des jeunes de l'essentiel. Malgré ces difficultés, les jeunes africains demeurent incontestablement des partenaires fiables et actifs dans la lutte en faveur de la protection de l'environnement. Leurs actions, parfois menées sans moyens, témoignent de cet engagement. Le jeune apparaît finalement à la fois comme observateur, dénonciateur ou acteur dans la lutte contre la protection environnementale. D'abord, s'agissant du jeune observateur, c'est un rôle souvent joué notamment dans les sphères internationales à l'occasion des rendez-vous mondiaux liés à la protection environnementale ou à la lutte contre les réchauffements climatiques. Ce statut d'observateur lui permet de prendre part au débat. Ensuite, la dénonciation, elle est faite dans le cadre des situations préjudiciables à l'environnement dans la plupart des pays. Et enfin, l'action qui peut être multiforme concerne aussi bien des éco-gestes du quotidien et la saisine judiciaire, le cas échéant. Dans le cadre du partenariat que pourrait incarner la jeunesse africaine, le militantisme joue un rôle assez important. Il s'agit sans aucun doute, en l'état actuel, d'un partenariat actif, même si il peut avoir une portée limitée. S'agissant donc de la portée limitée du partenariat des jeunes, il faut noter que malgré la diversité et la pluralité des efforts des jeunes, à travers l'observation, la dénonciation et l'action, celles-ci peuvent avoir une portée limitée. En effet, l'espace accordé à la participation des jeunes africains au processus juridique international relatif à la protection de l'environnement, ainsi que la portée de cette participation, peuvent varier selon les régimes conventionnels. Il est évident que le mode prépondérant de participation des jeunes est la participation à titre d'observateur aux négociations qui se tiennent pendant les conférences des parties aux accords multilatéraux relatifs à l'environnement. Cependant, il existe très peu de règles claires et efficaces établies pour faciliter leur contribution réelle au processus de négociation. Ensuite, il existe une convention, donc la convention relative à l'accès à l'information, la participation du public au processus décisionnel et l'accès à la justice en matière d'environnement. Adoptée en 1998, il s'agit d'un instrument international qui fait le plus de place à la participation publique, grâce notamment aux droits procéduraux accordés par les États parties aux acteurs non étatiques et donc aux jeunes. Cependant, sa méconnaissance par le grand public limite considérablement la portée du partenariat efficace que les jeunes africains sont susceptibles de nouer dans le cadre de l'observation. De même, les dénonciations initiées par les jeunes ne sont pas toujours suivies d'effet, dans la mesure où les acteurs judiciaires ne sont pas toujours à jour dans la connaissance et la maîtrise des règles environnementales applicables, même si des efforts remarquables se font observer sur le continent. Enfin, si l'on compare avec les dispositifs internationaux afférents aux droits de l'homme, le droit international de l'environnement présente des lacunes importantes s'agissant de la participation effective des actions que peuvent mener les jeunes dans le cadre du travail conventionnel et surtout dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre des instruments à l'échelle internationale. Finalement, s'il est vrai que le partenariat des jeunes est actif, mais qu'il rencontre des résistances, il convient donc, dans le cadre de ce panel, réfléchir à des approches de solutions. Face à la portée limitée, il convient donc de s'interroger sur les solutions susceptibles de renforcer la participation des jeunes Africains au processus de renforcement de l'état de droit en matière d'environnement, sans pour autant se verser dans le jeunisme. En effet, en s'inspirant des approches institutionnelles adoptées pour protéger l'environnement, les États les organisations sous-régionales, régionales africaines et l'Organisation des Nations Unies à travers le PNUE pourront œuvrer ensemble avec les jeunes pour combler les lacunes du droit international de l'environnement, les lacunes éventuelles. Cela passe donc par des solutions innovantes. Ces solutions doivent être créées aussi bien au niveau local, national et international. S'agissant du niveau local, il convient de renforcer la gouvernance locale avec un focus sur le rôle central des jeunes, leur implication dans la prise de décision. En ce qui concerne l'échelle nationale, il convient là aussi d'associer davantage les jeunes dans la prise de décision, aussi bien au niveau législatif qu'exécutif, et de les encourager à porter des cas d'atteinte environnementale devant la justice. Enfin, au plan international, il faudrait donner plus qu'un rôle d'observateur à la jeunesse afin qu'elle puisse véritablement peser sur les décisions prises à ce niveau de la gouvernance. C'est pourquoi il faudrait accroître, par exemple, le partenariat des jeunes africains avec l'envoyé du secrétaire général des Nations Unies pour la jeunesse. Celui-ci sert de défenseur mondial pour répondre aux besoins et aux droits des jeunes et pour rapprocher les Nations Unies d'eux. Le bureau de l'envoyé fait partie du secrétariat des Nations Unies et soutient les partenariats multipartites liés au plan d'action à l'échelle du système des Nations Unies sur les jeunes et aux initiatives de jeunes volontaires. Il est donc indispensable de connecter davantage les jeunes africains au reste du monde. Finalement, il est difficile de parler de gouvernance environnementale en Afrique sans les autres formes de gouvernance, à savoir la gouvernance démocratique, la gouvernance économique et la gouvernance climatique. De même qu'il est difficile de traiter de l'état de droit en matière d'environnement sans promouvoir l'état de droit dans les pays africains. La guerre, la pauvreté, la mauvaise gouvernance, les coups d'État répétés sont à l'évidence des freins pour une bonne gouvernance environnementale qui impliquerait des partenariats efficaces avec la jeunesse. C'est pourquoi, de notre point de vue, dans le cadre de la clôture de ce panel, nous estimons que l'éducation et la sensibilisation doivent jouer un rôle central dans le partenariat des jeunes Africains. C'est la clé pour le renforcement de l'état de droit en matière d'environnement. Et dans le cadre justement des formations, la task force des jeunes pour la résilience et la justice climatique en Afrique, qui travaille avec l'Académie africaine pour la pratique du droit international, œuvre chaque année dans le renforcement des capacités des jeunes en matière donc, de justice climatique, de résilience et de protection environnementale. L'année dernière, nous avions donc pu organiser deux sessions de formation en hiver et en été, où on a vu la participation de près de 50 jeunes venant d'une dizaine de pays. Et ce fut encore le cas cette année, car nous estimons que c'est à travers la sensibilisation qui elle-même passe par l'éducation que nous pourrons donner, que les États africains, en l'occurrence, pourront donner des moyens efficaces à la jeunesse et permettre donc à celle-ci de pouvoir œuvrer de manière dynamique dans la protection de l'environnement sur le continent. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kakugan, and thank you very much to Sarah and for the entire panel of speakers and experts. Unfortunately, it is time now to close the panel, but I'm hugely appreciative, and I know Robert has already extended his thanks on behalf of UNEP, but please allow me to do it again. Thank you very much for joining this important session in the 24-hour celebration of environmental rule of law. We have only, unfortunately, 3 minutes until the start of the next session. And we still need to do some sound checks because the next session is going to look at transboundary environmental governance in Europe, and there will be Russian interpretation available in the next session. So we do need to allow the Russian interpreters time to test their settings and to do their sound checks. So unfortunately, we're going to have to close. Thank you all very, very much once again. Please do stay and listen to the session on transboundary